Welcome to Spider-Verse Minute, the tri-weekly podcast where we watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 1 minute at a time. I'm Caroline Slater.
And I'm her brother Sean.
And today we are doing minute 14. It starts with the continuation of the conversation of Aaron and Miles in the previous minute, and ends with Miles having a restless night.
What did you title this minute?
I have titled this minute, The Bite.
Yeah, this is the end of this conversation. It's heavy-ish. It feels like, Uncle Aaron doesn't want to get into what him and his dad, kind of did as they were younger. Like, he doesn't want to... You get the feeling that he doesn't want Miles to know what he does for a living and, how not bad that him and his dad were when they were younger, but, what kind of... lives they lived. Yeah.
Yeah, and something I noticed too, kind of going off of the line that the last minute ended on and going into this one, Aaron says, he's a good guy, and there's a small pause, and it's you know how it is. I think that's what he says.
Yeah, he says, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So, it also, there's still some heaviness with that line, and with Aaron is just, he doesn't even fully understand, how to even maybe word it in a proper way that for Miles to get it.
Yeah, he you can tell he's not proud of what he does. He just does it because he needs to and feels like he has to do it, and wasn't able to ever really change his life around Miles's dad was able to, and so he doesn't want to bring his nephew into that fold as well.
Yeah. And one thing I really kind of like is we see the switch. Aaron gets a text and you see the switch in him.
Yeah, and that's, you can tell he's I gotta go do another job.
I gotta go. It's very serious, very focused. We don't see what the text is, but one thing, just small detail before I let you continue, is we do see the screen reflection, the glow in his eyes. We can't see what the screen is, but you can see it's reflected in his eyes.
Enhance.
Yeah.
We need to zoom and enhance.
Clear it up. It's just a little detail that I loved.
You can tell that he also tries to play off we gotta go, kind of cool. He doesn't want to show what he's actually feeling to Miles, and he's just okay, yeah, let's go. And with what they were going, this whole scene, just to tie up what that conversation was, and Uncle Aaron bringing Miles down here was, what him and his brother Jeff did, and it definitely Aaron, the way he acts, it makes Aaron seem like he was the younger brother, and so this is Aaron bringing the younger person down here, and trying to share that same sense of enjoyment that he had when he was younger.
Yeah, it's a very impactful scene. And then the spider appears.
Yeah, and then you see the spider. Well, first Miles goes to take a picture of the expectation. He's oh, I want to remember this really cool piece of art I did.
But before you go into that, one thing I noticed is that the spider actually appears on Miles's hood in the very beginning of the minute.
Yeah, you see him crawling.
Which I thought was kind of cool, and then he's crawling. But yeah, so Miles goes to take a picture on his phone with it. And then the spider appears on its hand.
And you have this big dramatic, you watch him bite into it. I really like the way they do this.
I love this sequence.
Yeah, it's the start of the language of comic books coming into the movie. You had, or coming, not into the movie.
Or at least into Miles's life, because we saw it a little bit with the Peter Parker montage.
We definitely saw it with Peter, but yeah, it's the first time Miles experiences that language coming in, and the way that you have the 3-panel like, oh, it bites him and you see it, boom, 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 3 panels. It's all very dramatic music. And then when we see the venom going into like Miles's bloodstream, it's all it's 2D. It has, panels on it.
Yeah.
It is
The
very
blood
much a
turning's
comic.
blue, even the art style changes. It's this like such epic moment, and then it zooms out and Miles just smacks away the spider.
Yeah, it's a very non-moment. Like, you're expecting him to like scream and like writhe as he gets the powers, and no,
or
it's
like
just
you
a
expect him to like
little
freak out,
bite.
like spider, and it's like no, it's just like gross.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of in a previous minute where we talked about how Aaron was able to get over the fence so smoothly and quickly.
Yeah.
And then Miles is just like, ah! It's like one of those moments. And I love to go into a little more detail on the sequence when first off, when the venom enters the bloodstream, it looks awesome with its like neon blue against these like reds and other flesh colors of the internal body. And I love how it's turning the red blood cells into that electric blue.
Yeah, and that like the way the venom enters looks very electrical. Like, it looks like lightning going through his body, and the way it kind of wraps around the blood cells, it looks like static sort of jumping from cell to cell.
Yeah, it's kind of like we talked about in the previous minute where, the spider changed colors on the paint cans, sort of foreshadowing one of Miles's powers. This one's almost foreshadowing another separate power of his.
Yeah, it's similar to his venom strike.
Mm-hmm. It's such a cool sequence. And then, like, after he smacks it off and Miles goes to walk away with his uncle, finally, I love it's a very simple technique, but just kind of that slide down to the spider corpse, as I wrote, and the ominous music just around it, like obviously it meant something, but it's like it's still like it's nice to see that like it still showed the spider there, since it does like Miles does go back to look for it later.
Yeah, and then it just like cuts to Miles laying in his room like nothing happened, kind of. But we do see that he is having like a very restless night.
Yeah, it's almost very flu-like symptoms where he's like off the covers, then he has a hoodie on with the blankets on him, and just...
Okay, so is he actually wearing a hoodie in that bit? It looks like one, but I couldn't tell if he just wrapped the blankets around him a lot.
You know what? It looked like a hoodie. Let me double check.
Yeah, because it definitely, like, he does have that sort of, like, okay, no covers. I hadn't really thought about it as, like, flu-like symptoms.
It reminds me like when I have a flu or, like, a fever.
Yeah, and you're just going back and forth between
like,
cover all the blankets.
Hot, but I'm also freezing.
Yeah.
Then he's, like, completely under the blanket. Then his feet are hanging out on his pillow. Oh, it is him just wrapped up in the blanket. You're right. Yeah.
The one thing... Go ahead.
You go. No, you go.
I was going to talk about the cans.
The cans? I was going to say, like, one of the things I really liked is, like, you can see the roommate's activity in the cans.
Yeah, the one thing I picked up was I was counting how many cans of drink that Genki had drunk through the whole thing. And it starts, when we cut to it, we see him, and he's sitting there, and there's only one open can, and he's got 5 unopened ones. And then, like, he does some work, and then, when it cuts a little bit later, he's got 5 open and 2 unopened. And then it cuts a little bit later, and he's got 8 opened, maybe 9. One looks like it, one zooms kind of off screen, so he probably got around to that. And then, like, in the next bit, he adds 2 more opened cans. So over the night, he drinks a total, he probably drinks like a 12-pack of soda or an energy drink or something.
I think it's an energy drink, because, going a little ahead, but in the next minute, you get a good view of the room, and they just say energy on it, it looks like.
Okay.
So, yeah, I can bring that up in the next minute, too. But I believe it, or like it looks like it's like the very end of energy. So I think they're energy drinks.
Yeah, you can see one of them gets knocked over in this minute.
Oh, you can? Okay.
And there's a couple that are laying on its side. So yeah, it probably definitely is like a 12 pack.
Yankee's just like, who needs sleep? I have work to do.
There's definitely a bunch. There's also a bunch that I didn't realize that those were knocked over cans. So there's like 3 or 4 that are also knocked over. Oh my God. Laying at the beginning already. So he probably, went through a couple beforehand.
Yankee may have a problem.
The other thing I noticed is the comic that he picks up to read. You can see the beginning of the cover. It's another of the True Tales of Spider-Man.
Yeah, because you actually notice it onto the side. I noticed it off the side, and then I picked it up and read it, and I didn't see it on the side. I'm like, oh, he must be reading that one.
Yeah, and this is another one that the artist we had talked about previously, he did the interior for this one. And we'll touch on it a little bit more when we see it. We get a closer look in a future minute. We'll touch on it then.
I also really like, it's part of the time lapse, but when it goes to the exterior and we see the Vision's bridge.
Yeah.
I think that's just a beautiful shot and a very cool way to show time passing. Well.
With the streaks of the cars going by.
The streaks of the cars, you can start seeing the light change during. I think it's a great shot. It's also like they really like that Vision's bridge. They're very proud of that. This is like what, the 3rd time we've seen it?
Yeah, it definitely, they're like, hey guys, remember, this is the school.
I don't even think it's that. I think it's more of just like, check out how cool this bridge is. It's a glass bridge hallway. How cool is this school? I
also really like, with that outside shot as it gets lighter, but the streets start getting a bit more crowded.
Yeah.
But also, like, the lights, the traffic lights are, like, quote-unquote in sync with each other, so they don't, like, all turn green at the same time. There is, like, a bit of delay, like, actual traffic lights, which is really neat.
Oh, that's neat. I didn't catch that.
The one other thing, too, that I want to bring up before talking about the alt scene that takes place during this minute, is Miles is only sleeping with one sock on. And
yeah, I noticed that. I'm like, oh, okay.
Was he just too tired to take off his second sock? Or does he sleep with both socks on and one of them fell off at night? Or is he weird and just only ever sleeps with one sock on?
I was going to say, maybe it's like with the untied shoe and it's a choice.
That could be it as well. I really hope it's not that third one, because that's just a little bit too weird.
He's an artist, Sean. Artists are weird. But no, in all seriousness, he's honestly, I think it more likely it's that he probably went to bed with both socks on, and then like off. During the night he either one fell off or he's just like I gotta, like, something happened with all his tossing and turning, like he just kicked one off and then just forgot about the other one.
Yeah, and while looking at this, I also remembered, I don't know if Gonke actually knows how to read, because when he's reading the comic book, he's got a light shining directly in his face, and there's no way you would be able to read like that.
Because he's not going to read. He just needs to look at the pictures. It's a comic.
Yeah, but even then, he wouldn't be able to actually look at them. Like, there's no way he is actually seeing what is on the cover of those pages, because he is staring into a desk lamp.
Look, Sean, energy drinks just keep you awake physically. It does not mean that you're mentally awake.
Yeah, that really bothered me.
I kind of want to know what he's working on.
You kind of see it a little bit better in the next minute, and you can kind of see it on some of his screens, but it looks like he's doing some programming.
Well, I want to know, is he working on the same thing? Is he doing, like, multiple things at once?
Oh, no, if it's actual programming, he's definitely working on the same project.
Okay.
Yeah, there might be some audio, that might look like there's some audio stuff in there, but I think it's mostly programming.
He's programming something to help him with his ceramics class. Do you want to talk about the alternate minute now? Because that's...
Yes, is there... Is there anything else you wanted to touch on this scene before we move over to
No,
that?
that's really all I have for this. Um, this is one of those minutes where like simultaneously a lot happens, but also not that much enough to take up note wise.
Yeah, it's a very much a transition minute.
Yeah, like really the big thing that happens is Miles getting bitten,
Yeah.
and that's like such a short sequence that like we don't really need that long to talk about
Yeah, and
it.
it doesn't have an effect right away, so we'll get to that.
Exactly.
So yeah, the alternate scene actually has him getting bitten in a different way.
Oh,
So
really?
what happens is, the spider still, we see the spider still crawl up onto Miles, and then like the end of the chat.
Mm-hmm.
But then it cuts to, instead of him getting bit in underneath the subway, it cuts to him on the subway, and he gets a text from Genki saying, hey, come to the music room.
Okay. Oh, so is this still like when Genki was still like
Yeah,
had a
this is
bigger
still
impact in
still
the?
part of, him having a bigger impact. And so it cuts to him being like, hey, come to the music room, I got something to show you. And so he's like,
Mm-hmm.
listen to this cool new track I'm playing. And he's like, nobody wants to listen to this. And he like unplugs it, and then he's like, you got to listen to this. And that's when Way Up by Jaden Smith starts
Oh, I
playing.
love that song.
Yeah, and so
That's a
they're
good one.
having like a little dance dance. They're just in the music room dancing around.
Oh, I
um
love this idea.
and it cuts the it's more of the like it's more of the tension and like
Mm-hmm.
playfulness, because we see the spider like crawling out of his backpack and crawling towards the two of
Oh,
them,
okay.
and then it
Mm-hmm.
crawls up like Genki,
Oh.
and like crawls onto his face, and Miles is like, spider, and he like just slaps it off of him. And then they like go back and forth and like slap each other trying to get the spider off. And then it doesn't show him getting bit, but then it cuts to the bedroom scene and like him having the restless night, and it shows him that he's like having a really bad dream, where it's kind of this trippy dream where he's floating through the Kirby dots, which is
I
used to
really
show
thought you
like
meant Kirby as in the Nintendo character for a
no.
second, and I'm like, oh,
um
interesting.
I mean, they are also round, but they're not
I
usually
mean, yeah,
pink.
and like I love Kirby, so it was a great image for a second. And if it's a trippy dream, it makes sense.
Yeah, but he's like floating through there, and he looks down, and he sees his parents being absorbed by it, and like his dad's
Oh,
reaching up to him, and Miles tries to reach down to him, but he's stopped by this like spider
oh
web
my god.
surrounding him, and then he wakes up screaming and sweating, and then this is when it cuts back to the movie, where it's the very beginning of the next minute where he goes, I think I hit puberty. Um, yeah, it was a very like interesting way to show him like, like this is how the spider affects him, and it also shows him extra sweaty in the morning, which ties in with the next minute as well.
Yeah. Uh, that is that is a very interesting way to show it. I don't. Well, and again, like I've expressed before, like the whole. I do hope when they make a sequel, because I will be shocked if they don't make a sequel to this movie, because they have it so perfectly set up at the end. For one, but we'll get to that in a future minute. If they don't bring in Genki more, because they had such fun ideas with him. So, like that whole idea of them just smacking each other seems hilarious to me. Um, but again, I'm glad they didn't put that in this movie, because it feels like it fits the tone they were going for more with him not having a friend yet. Uh, as for the change of like how they transformed, huh?
It makes sense, like with Genki being there for the whole thing. Like it makes sense for him to be there for the spider bite.
Oh yeah.
Because like in the comics, Genki's the first one to find out about
Mm-hmm.
Miles's new powers, and
Mm-hmm.
so doing that same sort of similar storyline here, it makes sense for him to be the one that's there,
Mm-hmm.
to be at the inception of the new Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's the having the like introducing the trippy like Kirby dots again now kind of is like, oh, it ties back in with what you saw earlier with the collider. It ties that back in here, and sort of shows that like even though Miles doesn't really get along with his parents, he still like cares for them and is worried about them.
They're definitely two very different scenes, and I like both of them. Obviously, like I was talking about, I love the way they did it in the movie. It's almost like comparing apples to oranges in a way, because they do feel very different in how they show the transformations. So I don't know if there's one.
Yeah, like currently there really is no like, we just there's no showing the transit, like we just see the bite in this one and then don't really see like what he's sleeping through, just that he's restless, whereas in the alternate version we don't see the bite, but we do see like part of the reason he's having a restless night as well,
what he's going through, like nightmare wise. I could see them doing like because since they decided to kind of not write out Genki, but sort of eliminate his role in this movie, which again I think was a smart decision personally. I do think they could have done a very interesting smash cut where they could have had him like bite Miles just kind of smacks him off, like not have the entering the bloodstream anything, and then just going to the time lapse and then seeing the nightmare sequence. Like I could have seen them doing something like that.
Yeah,
like they could have smashed it. It would, yeah. That's a very interesting alternate scene. I think I just totally pictured Miles and Genki like trying to smack the spider, and I just totally picture them sort of hand boning each other or like whatever that. It's very funny to me.
Doing what to each other?
It's like you make rhythm music with your body. It's like hand bombing, I think, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But that's how I picture it. But then with like terrified spider looks on their face, like trying to be like, get the spider! But they're like making this great music with the song.
Yeah. That would have been kind of neat.
That would have been funny. And that does make sense why they would have had, what is it, Way Up?
Yeah.
Yeah, Way Up. That makes sense why. I do like it in the credits, which is where they play it in the movie. But it would have been cool to see it in the movie as well.
Yeah, during the movie.
Yeah. I really don't know how I feel about that alternate scene. Like I keep thinking about it, I'm like, because again, like you could definitely make it work. You could still make like that dream sequence work and like cut out the Genki parts, because that's really interesting. Is there anything else you want to add to it?
No, that's all I have for the alternate scene and this minute as well.
Well, that is all we have for this minute. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you again Friday to see all of the effects that Miles goes through after this restless night. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.